Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing a beautiful card that features a tone-on-tone background created with some simple white die cuts. I love this effect, and it's something you can do with any die you may have in your stash. Today's card features some products from Waffle Flower Crafts, including the butterfly focal die and coordinating stencil. I'll also be using the Paper Hug Sentiment Stamp and Coordinating die set, and a little later in the video, I'll bring in the Butterfly Blossom die set to create my background. These are some fabulous new products, and I also went live with several Waffle Flower products on my YouTube channel earlier this month, and I'll be sure to throw a card up into the upper right-hand corner for that video. My color palette features Tidepool, Blueberry, Stardust, and Wildberry inks from Concord and Ninth, and I used that same color palette in my live stream video earlier this month, so this is going to kind of harken back to that a bit, although the cards feel very different. I'm starting out with the butterfly focal die, and I'm die cutting that from some white cardstock. I'm also die cutting the body of the butterfly from some champagne cardstock. And you'll see that this die creates not only the outline, but lots of details on the finished die cut. Now on the coordinating stencil, you'll find some etched outlines to help you line up the stencil, as well as some words that kind of guide you for the coloring, like highlights and shadows, and I think that's very helpful. I'm starting out with a grip mat from my Misty stamping tool, and I'm placing my butterfly onto this grip mat. Now, I'm adding a layer of Tidepool ink over the entire area of the butterfly, but if you wanted to make the upper area and the lower area different colors for the base, you can do that using the stencil. So since I added that layer of color over the entire thing, I actually skipped the first opening of the stencil, and now I'm moving on to the second opening, and I'm adding some blueberry ink just towards the top of that. And towards the bottom, I'm going to blend in a little Wildberry ink. Now, I could have skipped the Wildberry ink step here because in the next opening of the stencil, it's going to add color to that area, but I didn't think it was a problem because it allows that purple to kind of creep up into the blue a little bit as well and create a little softer line. Now I'm also adding some Stardust ink, and I'm intensifying some areas of that Wildberry ink. I'm kind of really using the stencil as a guide, but I'm adding several colors to each opening of the stencil. So here you're going to see me go back to that Blueberry ink and add some of that along the outer portions of this detail area. And once I kind of am happy with the results for this layer of the stencil, I'll wipe my stencil and move it to the final area and add some more color. I'm adding some Wildberry that was just left over on the brush there to those kind of two openings towards the center of the body. And I'm also going to intensify some of the blueberry areas that I had previously blended. I'm going to bring in more of that Wildberry ink and intensify it on those dot details on the bottom of the wings. And you'll notice that I'm wiping my stencil with every change of color, so I'm not dragging the color or the previous color into the new color that I'm using. And finally, I ended with a little bit of this Tidepool, and then I'll finish off with some Stardust towards the center of the butterfly wings towards the body. Now, once I'm thrilled with the results, and let me tell you, I was thrilled with the results. I can remove my stencil, and I have this beautiful blended butterfly with the help of that stencil and all of the details that the die adds. And I'm going to add some shimmer to this. I'm grabbing an old favorite. This is Stardust Stickles, and I'm adding a thin line of the Stardust Stickles, which is a glitter glue, to the edge of the butterfly. So I'm just going around all of the outer edges of the wings. And then finally, I'm going to bring a little towards those dark areas towards the center of the body where I have that blue and purple. And look at this amazing shine. Now I'm going to set this aside to dry because I'm very accident prone and I don't want to mess this up. And while that's drying, I'm going to die cut a few more pieces. I'm starting out with a vellum layer of the butterfly and 3 layers of this body die cut from some white cardstock to give it a little bit of dimension. So I have the 3 layers of white die cuts. I'm adding some liquid glue to the front of those, and I'm stacking up the champagne body on top of those layers. This is going to give it a little bit of dimension on the finished project. I'll also take this vellum butterfly and just trim off the antenna and then kind of split it right down the middle of the body to create two separate pieces that I'm going to then layer behind my ink blended white cardstock version. This is going to create kind of a gossamer effect, a really ethereal effect on this butterfly. To attach the vellum layer, I just added some liquid glue at the back of my butterfly, and then I'm adding my vellum pieces just slightly offset so you get that little bit of shadow, that little bit of vellum just peeking out. It's just such a beautiful look. I love the way that this turned out, and I'm just holding it there with my fingers for a second while that sets up, and look at that effect. Just so beautiful. Now, once I have that in place, I'm going to add some liquid glue to the center of the butterfly where the body goes, and I'm going to add that layered die cut with the champagne cardstock on top in the center of my butterfly. That gives it just a little bit of shine. If you wanted to create more contrast, you could instead cut your body of your butterfly in a dark gray or a black cardstock. Now here's where I'm bringing in the butterfly blossom die set, and I used this in that live stream that I mentioned earlier, and I'm die cutting several of these flowers and the flower centers from some plain white cardstock. Honestly, I wanted a background or something for this to kind of sit on, but I didn't want there to be a lot of color because I didn't want to take away from the beauty of my butterfly and have some competing colors in the background. And so I decided a tone-on-tone white background would be the way to go. And these beautiful blooms that are in the butterfly and blossoms die set I thought were perfect because they have a little texture to them. And when you add the floral centers to them, it's going to give them a little bit of dimension. And this is going to add a ton of texture to my background overall. So I'm starting out by die cutting several of the blooms as well as the floral centers, and I'm adding some liquid glue to the centers of the floral. And then I'm going to use what I call my magic wand, which is an embellishment tool, to pick up these floral centers and place them onto the liquid glue in the center of the florals. Now, this doesn't look like much here, but when we start adding this all to the background and you have the various levels and textures going on, it creates a lot of texture on this white on white background. It is such a beautiful look, and you could even try this with a different color cardstock, like a blue on blue, a yellow on yellow, or a purple on purple, or even a pink on pink. Any color would work. It would be a fun effect to kind of experiment with. So I laid out all my florals and I kind of used my butterfly to help guide me. And once I have my positioning where I think I like it, I'm picking up each of those individual florals and I'm adding some liquid glue behind them and attaching them to this panel of white cardstock, which is trimmed down to about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. You can see I'm allowing them to overlap. I'm tucking some behind others, and I'm just bringing in that butterfly to make sure that I'm kind of positioning these where it kind of makes sense. Once I have everything glued down, I'm going to take my favorite scissors and I'm going to trim off all of the excess. And those little pieces I can actually use to fill in areas where I feel like it just needs a little something else. But I really love a pair of long blade scissors for this. And these scissors from Spellbinders are amazing. Now, once I have everything attached and glued down, I'm going to take my butterfly and adhere it to my card front using some foam adhesive. I have just a few little strips of foam adhesive on the back side, and I'm positioning my butterfly at an angle where it kind of looks like it's coming up from all of these blooms. And then I'm going to mount this panel of cardstock onto a panel of champagne cardstock to give a little shine around the edges of the card front. I'm using just a little bit of tape runner adhesive for this layer, but when I go to attach this entire card front onto my A2 card base, I'm going to attach it with a panel of foam adhesive. Now, the margin on this champagne cardstock is quite narrow, and I wanted it that way on purpose, but you have to take a little more time when kind of positioning those layers on top of each other to make sure you get them lined up. Now, honestly, I think this card could be totally done right here. I think it's so beautiful. That butterfly takes center stage, but then you have all that texture of the tone-on-tone background. But you know me, I can't leave it there. I need a sentiment. And so I'm prepping some vellum with a powder tool, and then I'm inking up this paper hug sentiment using some VersaMark ink and stamping it onto the vellum. Once I have that stamped, I'm going to use the Altenew Platinum Embossing Powder. It's a perfect match for this champagne cardstock. And once I have the embossing powder sprinkled on, I'm going to set that with my heat tool. Now, something I wanted to point out on this Paper Hugs stamp set is that there are numbers by each sentiment. Those coordinate with an etched number on the back of each of the dies in the die set. So if you're ever having a hard time figuring out which die goes with which sentiment, that is a super helpful tool that Waffle Flower includes on their sentiment stamps and dies. I've added some really small strips of foam adhesive behind my sentiment, and now I'm adding it to my card front. You can see it coordinates beautifully with that champagne cardstock. And I'm going to add some crystal confetti. This is from the Stamp Market. It is super sparkly. I'm adding it on using my embellishment tool as well as some liquid glue. And then I'll finish my butterfly off by adding just a little bit of glossy accents to those blue areas towards the center of the wings, and also the little dot details on the bottom of the lower parts of the wings. Now right here, this glossy accents looks a little bit milky, but when it dries completely, it will dry clear and it will be a beautiful addition of shine to my butterfly. Now this tone-on-tone background technique can be tried with a variety of different types of dies, and I would love to know in the comments below, have you ever tried a tone-on-tone background? I honestly think this was the perfect addition to this beautiful butterfly that I created, but you can let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check below, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below in the YouTube description as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials, as well as my Carissa Crafts live stream. I will be going live tomorrow on Friday, so join me at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks again for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.